As Paul said, I'm Hunter Smith. I'm the founder and head brewer of Champion Brewing Company. Thanks. This is an impressive crowd. Thanks for a lot of you guys for coming out on a Monday evening to join us. Let me see. I believe I need, here it is. Here's this clicker. So at any rate, thanks for coming out. So Champion Brewing Company, as Paul described, started basically on a stovetop. I was an avid home brewer, and once I thought my beer was good enough, or was as good as commercial beer, I decided to get into it professionally. In hindsight, I'm sure it wasn't, but it was good enough. I had some really supportive friends and family who told me as much. So we started very small. We began demolition on our 6th Street location, which is our downtown tap room, in the summer of 2012. Most of the demolition was done by myself and my brother-in-law, who's still our brewer there at the tap room. After about a year of getting to know the neighborhood and explaining to people where we were, and answering the phone and giving directions as to where we were, we kind of, got steam and began to run out of beer. Our demand was such that we were selling more than we could make. So, without additional space for growth on site where we were, we decided to go for broke and opened a separate production facility, which we currently refer to lovingly as the Missile Factory. It's named after our flagship beer, which is Missile IPA. We work with both the city of Charlottesville and now the county where the Missile Factory is located. We'll be adding 3 more tanks in May, and then we'll be at capacity. We're going to have to consider building or leasing additional production space potentially for 2017. So as you can see here, this is information provided by the Virginia Craft Brewers Guild. The Virginia-owned craft breweries have created 8,906 jobs at over 142 breweries. Thanks. You wouldn't think that number to be that high, but it is. It's pretty amazing. These community-based breweries are creating jobs by competing for market share with domestic light lagers and by creating fun, friendly atmospheres for customers to visit and drink beer. I'm sure many of you have seen them, and it's a great place to hang out. Most all of this is courtesy of Senate Bill 604, which allowed brewers to, it's a big deal, which allowed brewers to sell beer by the glass in our tasting room. So previously you could only have 2-ounce samples or growler fills. If you visited Star Hill 4 or 5 years ago, that was the case. So some of you are familiar with the change. You can see by the growth numbers here that the Senate bill drastically increased the amount of brewers in the state. You can see the spike there. This is due largely to the fact that small startup companies are now more economically feasible. Without the ability to sell pints on premises, a startup brewery's only option was to start by outlaying millions of dollars for a manufacturing facility to ship beer wholesale, which for a lot of people isn't an option. But without 2012's Senate Bill 604, Champion Brewing Company and dozens of other breweries and our growing annual revenues just would not exist. We would not have opened. A small brewery really can't subsist on wholesale prices and tastings alone. As much beer as we do put on a distributor's truck, we still get a considerable amount of business by selling beer over the bar at our tap room. So one of the challenges we have is space here locally. When we began our search for a production facility, we wanted to remain as close to downtown Charlottesville as we could. That's a big part of our identity. But it became increasingly difficult to find space for a project of our size. The listings on the commercial real estate market, we really exhausted those and couldn't find anything. Just so happens that through a friend had a private listing for the landlord that we rent from now. And that was how we found this space. It was literally the last space we looked at, and then beyond then we were going to have to look for other spaces. So we got lucky and we got creative as far as how we fit tanks in the building that we're in. We continue to do that, but otherwise we were kind of out of space. As we grow, our options are still relatively limited. Without a new place to build, which I'm optimistic that we'll find, we would otherwise be forced to consider other locations outside of the city or the county, and we really don't want to do that. As you can see here, several large national brewers have announced and built multi-million-dollar facilities on the East Coast to support East Coast distribution, expand their distribution, and in the process create considerable freight savings. Obviously, it's a little bit cheaper to brew beer in Virginia Beach and sell it in Virginia Beach than it is to ship it from San Diego. So a lot of savings they've found there. The amount of money being spent on these facilities is astounding, and it's all relatively locally. places like Asheville have kind of created this, critical mass of a beer culture that's interesting for outside brewers to relocate to. So, really in conclusion, when a community embraces the culture that its companies are promoting and vice versa, it results in steady growth of locally grown businesses, and it also attracts companies like the ones in the last slide to relocate here. And as our residents and local businesses continue to support the growth of local beer, wine, spirits, and dining culture, as well as the arts, not only do we drive revenue and support our local businesses, but we also create a culture in Charlottesville that becomes a magnet and allows us to not only keep our great employees here, but also recruit other employees from other areas. So, anyway, thank you.